Welcome back. It's still Nigeria Decides 2023. And like I said, this is the most anticipated and awaited election in the history of Nigeria, having to decide, knowing that we've gone through a postponement from the March 11th till today, the March 18th of the year 2023. Of course, we know that we've gotten different reports from all around Lagos and Nigeria, in particular, going around the 28 states that are voting at the moment, choosing their number one leader to govern the state. And with us at this moment is Mr. Jide Ologun, who is a legal practitioner, to be shedding more light about the electoral process, about our safety and security apparatus, and the rule of law. Welcome on the show.
Thank you very much.
I hope
to be here.
I hope you've participated in this exercise.
I have exercised my civic franchise.
That's beautiful. So moving on to the topic that we have at hand, and I think that a lot of people are unpleased with the performance of INEC, considering the fact that we saw what happened in the presidential election on the 25th of February, and looking at what is happening today. What is your submission as regards INEC in entirety?
You see, it's relative. My opinion does not represent the true picture. Okay, let me start from there. There are allegations and counter-allegations. And that is why the election tribunals are there to attend to these complaints. But by virtue of Section 153 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, INEC is the legitimate umpire given the mandate to manage elections. And when they go through the processes and you are not satisfied, you can go to the tribunal. You see, and until we probably amend our constitution to give another body a parallel authority to checkmate INEC, we have to settle for that. You see, so, and that's what you call grievance procedures in human resources management. It's already there. Even within the Electoral Act 2022 as amended, there are provisions there that where you are not satisfied with the results, you can go for judicial interventions, you see. And when you talk about INEC, INEC is not a newborn baby. If you look at the history of elections in Nigeria, it started in 1958 when we had the National Electoral Commission led by Robert Roth, an expatriate, to conduct the 1959 elections towards our political independence. And after that, in 1960, we had the Federal Electoral Commission, headed by Kofo Abayomi, who you know, and that commission managed the 1964 and 1965 elections. And do you know, as far back as that 1964-1965, NCNC and AG complained about absence of credibility.
So we've had these issues with us.
It's been with us. It's been with us. And in 1966, the coup came in, followed by the Civil War. You know, and the coup dismantled the electoral processes until in 1978, General Olusegun Obasanjo retired as the military head of state, constituted what we used to call FEDECO, Federal Electoral Commission, to manage the Second Republic elections, which was terminated on the 31st of December 1983 by a military intervention, eventually, you know, headed by General Buhari, who is now our converted Democrat president. You see, so, and to the present dispensation, it started in 1998, the INEC we are talking about. And we've gone through some rounds, you see, and you expect that people will want to benchmark their expectations with performance. But may I give this caution that I have given myself? It's your words against mine. I sat down with an open mind to look at it. Okay, if I'm complaining that my presidential candidate was not given the mandate, then why should I accept my National Assembly candidate that also cross through the same process. So why don't I? So when people began to call for cancellation of elections, you need to sit down and evaluate. And that's why it's difficult with the judiciary. You can shout out there, you can roll out allegations, but come, bring your facts, bring your evidence, bring your witnesses, bring your exhibits. And so far so good. From the deep evaluation we have done, there are allegations and counter allegations against all the major political parties.
I like the fact that you are a legal luminary, and so you would be able to shed more light when it comes to the legal process, especially with the judiciary in Nigeria. You know, a lot of people, and you just mentioned it, that the court should be the arbiter, the highest arbiter, especially the Supreme Court, should be the highest arbiter of the law. But most times, when people go to the courts, do they get justice? That's the question. Because when you look at the fact that most times our elections aren't usually decided by the people, they're eventually decided by the court. And that's what we see happening right now, litigations following the presidential election. And we've seen cases where a lot of people are saying they do not even believe in the process. Where do Nigerians stand when it comes to deciding who wins the elections?
Brilliant question. But let me use a close precedent. In 2015, we had an election. An incumbent president was removed by virtue of the elections. While they were still counting the votes, he congratulated the president-elect, and he's still on record till today.
We know that's rare, and that's why all the accolades went to him.
Let me say this: the judiciary has no business if you don't come to the judiciary. It is demand and supply.
So how did we get to this point where we have to go to the judiciary to decide who takes the power, who takes the office?
Wonderful question. It is allowed constitutionally, fundamental human rights. So when you feel that you have been served injustice, you are entitled to pursuing justice.
But it has become the order of the day.
That is where we are today. It didn't happen with Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, and Sunak in the UK. You see, so, and these are issues. But I believe we are growing our democracy. But if no one goes to the election tribunal, the justices will be enjoying their lunch and dinner with their family and be engaging the regular assignments that they have. So I think it has to do with the politicians, with the umpire managing elections, because obviously there were perceived issues that did not give credence to the exercise. And having said that, eventually what became prominent was the transfer of results to the IREV. Please calm down and realize we did not happen immediately for some reasons, because eventually, and INEC is saying, bring your own certified
proof
result from your polling units to compare with what we have on the IREV. And the IREV is, the material of INEC. You can have access to them, but primarily it is an asset of INEC to serve as a data bank for these processes. And that is why we need to explain the role of the judiciary. Okay, now, governorship election was coming. Some parties constitutionally went to court to request for access to voting materials. And we keenly monitored. At a point in time when the noise was hot out there, INEC invited them, a team of legal luminaries that visited INEC, that come. If you want some of these things now, we make them available to you. And INEC also did not unanimously decide to reconfigure towards the governorship, and INEC sought the approval of the court. And that led to the postponement, so that there won't be any palliative configuration. And that is why we are experiencing some improvements today in terms of managing logistics.
Although there were talks that it is their usual practice to reconfigure the Beavers machine,
Yes.
because it has to go through some resetting so
Exactly.
that, you know, the information on
Exactly.
it is
And
refreshed.
if the court was not persuaded that the database will not be tampered with, they would not have granted it. You see, so INEC is on a slippery ground. And that's why I took the pain to take us to the history of elections in Nigeria. If Labour Party's candidate was declared winner, in fact, APC is asking to access voting materials. Labour Party is
All
asking to
parties are
access voting.
saying the same thing at this
PDP is
time.
asking to ask. I think it's NNPP that is,
We're not really hearing from
undecided
them.
yet. So it should have been either way. So we should be working towards a point in time when both the umpire and the politicians and the electorate, begin to allow true credibility. And I think we are moving closer to that.
Okay.
For those of us who have taken the pain to evaluate the whole procedure, if Lagos State lost the presidential polls to Labour Party, something is going on in INEC.
Although Labour Party said that the figures
The
were
line
also
was
manipulated.
Let them bring their... There were reports also that some people started manipulating because a lot of pseudo INECs emerged online. But constitutionally, by virtue of Section 153 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999, it's only INEC. You know, when a football match is going on, some spectators may bring their whistles. But the whistles that will determine the match
That of the official
is
referee.
held by
The referee.
the referee. And if after the match you are not satisfied, you may approach FIFA or
Absolutely.
the local organizing committee that, hey, and that is where we are now. And I'm speaking to electorate. We are all citizens. We want the best for this country. Now, unfortunately, some people have accumulated unnecessary enemies. For politicians who are exchanging handshake,
Who are going to
for
each other's
politicians who have
parties
crossed from one party to the
to
other,
another.
who are embracing
Friends.
each other at the airport, who are congratulating each other. I mean, we
Which brings
need...
us to the issue of political ideology. In Nigeria, it's been said over time that there is that lack of ideology when it comes to parties. People cross carpet, like they're changing
Without
their clothes.
consequences?
It's more like there are no distinct philosophies for different parties. And so most times it's usually a case of what serves my political interest. Most times that leads to, people going into office because they just want to, get their hands into the cookie jar and not really serve the people. How do we move from that kind of politics that determines or that fills the pockets of some set of people, as against putting people in office who are there to serve the people?
The journey has started, and without any bias. If you have seen how some politicians have been jolted off their executive seats to begin to engage feedback from the people, you will know that Nigeria appears to be at the breaking point of a new curve. And what is this ideology we are talking about? Let me take us to China. China has two strong governance positions: deliberate and consistent national development, then a very strong social order. And by virtue of the synergy between these two concepts, China was able to move about 800 million citizens into the prosperity bracket within a time space, in a population of about 1.4 billion. You talk about the acceptance of the government of China, it's above 90%. The care for the old is excellent. Do you know that there was a presidential election in China on the 10th of March, 2023?
Which puts Xi Jinping back
Exactly.
in office for the
You see,
fifth
so
term.
you can compare.
Third term,
And
rather.
for us, election is like war.
But-
So
Is it, sorry to interject, is it safe to say Nigerians can still have trust in the judiciary system, knowing that some of our politicians or our leaders are quite defiant to the rule of law?
it's not the role of the judiciary to implement the laws. It's the role of the executive.
And when these executives
Which we know.
themselves are quite defiant, is this defiancy I'm saying?
we just
nonchalant.
experimented it. We learned in social studies that there are three arms of government: separations of powers, checks and balances, the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. And when recently states went to the Supreme Court, that by virtue of Section 232 of the Constitution of Nigeria 1999 as amended, is the court of first and final jurisdiction between states and federation on disputes. And we started to argue that CBN is not a party. You have to go to Federal High Court. But the Supreme Court, in her wisdom and considering the plight of the people and the danger our economy was exposed to, went ahead to assert her position as the highest court in the land since 1963. And it took the executive about 10 days to express through body language compliance. And that's the point we are making. So you don't blame judiciary for that. The justice of the Supreme Court will not go and grab the president.
Although there have been talks about the fact that even the judiciary isn't totally autonomous. They've been talking about getting autonomy, just the same way the local government have been asking for autonomy. And this has really affected the way they operate. And you know that saying that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. So most times when they have to go cap in hand to the executive to get funds, it leaves them no choice sometimes to dance to the tunes of those who pay them.
You know, that is the assignment for the legislative arm of government. We have been discussing the local government autonomy. The federal government is willing to give judicial autonomy, but what are the state houses for assembly doing? How many of them are subscribing to it? Look at the child right. How many of them have subscribed to it?
23 states in Nigeria.
Exactly.
24.
And you see, having said that, it's still all about the National Assembly. If the National Assembly insists that this is what must be, and the three arms collaborate to implement, why not? But we still have issues of releasing the allocation to local government directly or going through the governor and things like that. You see, there are 109 senators, 360 House of Reps members in the National Assembly. And like I expressed earlier, the mandate in Section 4 of our Constitution is make laws for the peace, order, and good governance of Nigeria. And you can amend these laws. The Electoral Act got amended in the year 2022, introducing some fresh things.
Goals and ideas.
For example, if you look at Section 3, it says INEC must get the money for the elections a year ahead. Whether that was implemented, I don't know.
We don't feel the impact anyways.
You saw how we tested the fact that political appointees must resign if you are going to get active in seeking office at the primary level. We tested it. You know, you saw the attention given to the physically challenged. You know, different aspects of the law. We have tested, and we are still testing Section 47, talking about application of beavers. You see, then you go to Section 62. You know, so you look, these provisions are there, and you can always amend them. So I expect, for instance, that the 10th Assembly should look at the impact of monetary and fiscal policies on governance in Nigeria and look at whether CBN's autonomous goes to the extent of implementing a policy that can throw the economy into depression or not. And amend. What's the meaning of amendment? Let us improve on the quality of the laws that we have. So these are issues. And for this purpose, they are paid from taxpayers' money to be there, not just to dress fancifully and then blow siren.
Or to drive in bogus cars.
Exactly. And again, and that's why I'm looking at the role INEC has played. Have you noticed that majority of them, despite the wealth some of them have, are not returning to the chambers? So please, let's sit down and give INEC that space. This election has prompted a lot of surprises. That by the time we sit back, maybe in another 2 months' time,
and analyze,
and with hindsight, you will know that indeed some great things are beginning to happen in
So
this
means
country.
you buy the idea
sorry, I would
of
have to
some people.
interject your
Okay.
line of thought because at this point we're going to go on a quick break, and when we return, Jide Ologun is still here with Omobolale Adeshuyi and I. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Yes, there's both the voter apathy, no doubt. However, I believe that there are many more people who want to come out to express their franchise, but the overwhelming presence of security men and the lockdown of the city. If I were not the governor, I'm not sure I would have been able to get to my polling unit. I mean, the lockdown is extreme, so I'm appealing that it be relaxed while, the security adequate measures are taken to monitor and police people's activities, but not prevent people from getting to their polling units. Right now, people are being prevented or they're being deterred from going to vote.
Was that not based on the probably report or the apprehension that this
Yes, we
elections
know.
will be violent?
We know. So we're saying there should be some balance. This is extreme.
Right,
What are your expectations, sir?
You can see that it's a totally different mood today compared to what happened on February 25th. That was an aberration. Today, the people will come out and express themselves based on the local issues, not national issues.
You are confident you win your unit?
I'm the governor of Edo State.
Welcome back. It's still the Nigeria Decides. And of course, we just saw the executive governor of Edo State, Mr. Godwin Obaseki, saying categorically that the security architecture around the state is quite overwhelming and the presence of security men, calling it extreme. So I'm coming to Jide Ologun to say, what's your view about what the governor said in Edo State? Do you think it's about the security architecture, or do you think it's about some other fears that is alleged to rent the air?
It's a reflection of a gap. They all form governments and should have consulted exhaustively to know the level of security interventions required. But when the environment has not been presented as being safe, then you call for this overwhelming intervention. And I challenge the politicians themselves, if you put together their statements towards elections and profile, I think sometimes they do more harm than good to create fear. There is nothing desperate about coming to serve the people, and these are questions some of us are asking. What is you are coming to serve? So why all
There's so much
this
apprehension
desperation and everything? I mean, we saw parliamentarians resigning in the UK. It's an exalted
The last 2 years we've had.
resigning to say, Boris, this is not what we promised, and
do
that
this
you
again.
have disrespected the rule of law, you have breached the COVID-19 protocol, and things like that. So you see those who have submitted to the rule of law in their environment. And when Boris saw the way they were resigning, and he realized he had to step aside, it was a reluctant thing. And interestingly, another person got there
Liz Truss.
who was given the mandate. She sat down before it, read through, and realized that
This is not for me.
I won't deliver on this. And she willingly stepped aside.
But I think this is something that a lot of our Nigerian leaders, politicians do not have. I don't see them coming out willingly to say, you know what, I think probably this ministry is greater than my effect or my efficiency. Let me go home to rest. They don't do it.
And
Why?
it's not just a Nigerian thing, it's an African thing.
Let's even narrow it down to-
tight rulers who want to just be in office, pass it down to their next generation, and then they don't just think about the people that they're governing.
That is the consequences of not allowing national development. Being a parliamentarian in the UK does not give you any special privilege, in quotes, because the basic amenities are there. You see?
Functional.
You know what I mean? So look at David Cameron. His position on Brexit did not fly. Simple thing like that. And the man resigned. That was his own way of protest. He saw himself that if I have failed to push my position through, then I do not belong to this office. And that is what it's about, service.
But are you looking at countries like China, which just held their elections, and we have Xi Jinping coming in for the 3rd time after, 10 years of rule?
I told you the acceptance rating of Xi Jinping, it's above 90%. So let me say this. If there is good governance, you may not even know the name of your leader.
Just transition into
if,
good
if you
to
want
good.
to understand Nigeria, let's look at the agitations. What are we agitating for? Whether you are talking of Biafra, talking of Ariwa, talking of
Yoruba nation.
what are we agitating for? That let there be justice, let there be equity, let us have a
fairness.
taste of the enormous resources in this country. You see, when that is done, we have constant electricity from the 2nd largest deposit of bitumen in the world that we have in Nigeria. Let's fix our roads. Let's blast some rocks between Okene and Okakoko in Ondo State, the capital of the world. That's my hometown. Let's fix the roads. Let students go to school. Let's restructure our budgeting. Put more on capital expenditure than recurrent expenditure. Let's prevent oil theft. Let's revive our refineries. Let's refine these products so that we retain at least 90% of the products we can get from these raw materials, rather than shipping them out at a huge cost, getting about 7% of the products and the remaining 93 remaining with the refining nations. So these are issues. And we love each other in this country. I have clients that are from Igbo extraction. I have from Hausa. I've been to Arochukwu.
But when it comes to elections, it's a different ballgame.
I think it's something that is
ethnicity,
orchestrated,
religion,
particularly to cross
the
divide.
electorate must not encourage it. I am not sentimental when it comes to attending to issues of governance. Like I said, I've been around Nigeria, Kaduna, Sokoto, Maiduguri, Jos, Benue, Arochukwu, Abia, and Enugu, Anambra, everywhere.
But Barrister, in tandem with what the Edo State governor was saying, we have elections that are usually highly militarized. And we know that even when it comes to civil matters, the military isn't supposed to be involved. We're supposed to have the police in charge of that. But in this country, it looks like maybe because we are under police to even start with, we've not even met the 400
Standard
citizens
required.
to one, citizen, or to one police rather, of the UN standard. So is it a case of us not seeing into that possibility of having the police take on the civil affairs? Because that was one of the issues we had when it comes to the NSAS protests, with a lot of Nigerians complaining that the police were abusing power and all of that. And so all of this fear that it creates, most times is usually due to the fact that we don't see the police carrying out the civil matters the way they should. And then we have the military men on the street causing that panic and fear and leading to voter apathy.
I will engage 2 provisions in our constitution.
Okay.
Section 14, subsection 2 says that the security and the welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government. And that starts from providing that security and welfare to key us into the motto of the country, which is unity, faith, peace, and progress. And you now go to section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution as amended, that says that the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. So when you have police officers that are not operating within ethical expectations, there should be mechanism to deal with them. But in a situation where you may practically need to force your president to obey the rule of law, whether it's denied or not, you are sending a signal. If a father calls a young boy that go and buy me cigarettes and light it on the way, then someday you must prepare.
Does that have a ripple effect on the security apparatus?
Absolutely. I am so worried, and it's a leadership issue. I have given this example. in handling some applications of dual citizenship, it gets to a point I feel like let's abandon this application. That
Why?
country will profile you so heavily. Your source of income, when you register that company, the schools you attended, they want to be sure that this person
Every nitty-gritty.
that is coming into our nation is coming to add value.
It's of character.
Won't come in here to start sponsoring terrorism. Dubai has slammed visa ban on Nigeria. Nigeria has over 200 million population. Do you know how much we spend on applying for visa, non-refundable funds, on a weekly basis? And Dubai is saying, no, please stay in your country. I mean, let's sanitize our environment. So when we have a nation where bandits can bring down fighter jets, I think you must commend the police for even being able to come out to say, we want to carry out our mandate. You see bandits threatening to kidnap a president, bandits breaching our international
convoy.
airport, breaching a part of Nigerian Defense Academy, breaching our rail transport system that we have invested so much in. So these are issues. These are issues. So, you know, the governance we are talking about, we need to first design where exactly we are approaching. I was doing a research on this election of a thing. In 1950, I think the population of Kano was about 123,000. Today, it's between 6 million and 9 million. Lagos is over 20 million. That is why it qualifies to be a mega city. So what have we put in place? In fact, when we start discussing the police, you may be amazed that the history of police in Nigeria dates back to 1820. So we need to upscale. And basically, you need to be able to unite the people, build into them, and practice governance in a way that we earn their trust and patriotism to have a truly civil society. I think in Sweden, Sweden imports inmates from Norway to service their correctional facilities because they must provide jobs for their citizens through the correctional facilities. And if there are no people from Sweden to put in the correctional facility, you say, Norway, do you have some there? Bring them. We take care of them.
You know, since
the rate of crime low and everything. But in our environment, almost every action, you know, we engender aggression and everything. I've been advising people, even when you are greeting people now,
you have to be careful.
please let your smile be broad so that it's not interpreted as you are coming to attack because people are on edge. So it's a holistic issue. We must breed a civil and friendly society in an atmosphere of fear. Look at what we left behind as far back as 1970, replaying itself now. Ethnic hatred. We are not even discussing hate speech now. We are talking about hate vote. It's a serious matter for government. And that's why they all must come together and ask some of the questions we are asking. What language does crude oil speak? What language does gold speak? Okay, the oil thieves that we have been reading about, are they from just one ethnic group? Are they not from all the ethnic groups? So who is deceiving who with religion and ethnicity? And that is why citizens must wake up. A lot of theories have been defied now. Muslim ticket has won. You know, so let's come together as a people and really look at what exactly are we entitled to. A wise man said, you don't get what you deserve in business, you get what you negotiate. So what should we be negotiating? And that is why, rather than getting bitter with one another, we should get better by mobilizing and collaborating to establish the culture of accountability. You must render account to us.
I like the fact that you mentioned accountability, which will take us to the to wrap up this segment of the show. In talking about accountability, what do you think will be your advice for the incoming presidency? What should he work on first? I know there are stages to these things, but there should be a first foundational step, which will build in the architecture design of a new Nigeria.
You know, he has promised to remove subsidy. You're talking about the president. And Ghana just did. And I read that Nigeria lost about $10 billion in 2022 to subsidy. Who are the guys behind this subsidy? Why can't our refineries work? You have to focus on education. He has promised. You focus on health. basically, electricity is crucial, please.
To every business and every
Any
person.
community that is in darkness is not ready
Right.
to move forward. So these basic things. And why don't you just gather all the agitations, then put them? What is this person asking for? If you have 4 children as a father, like I do, you have 4 generations
Absolutely.
with different aspirations. What thrills Ifelolua may not appeal to Ibukunlua, so you need to understudy them. One of my daughters doesn't want to eat fish, but I know that there's a particular kind of fish that when she
That
sees
she
it,
resents.
she will drop that, I don't eat fish. So it's about carrying people along. All the societies in the world are diversified, even when you speak the same language. But how do you manage conflict? How do you mobilize people in the direction of progress? I mean, you are going to New York City in the US and you get to the airport here, you don't choose the people you fly with. You are all put in an aircraft. And whether you like each other or not, you must be in that aircraft for 13 hours.
Except you don't want to make the trip.
You cannot jump out in the air. So we need to understand governance. Governance is not about coming to office for luxury, like we experience here, all the brigani shouting, blowing siren up and down. No, fix our roads, let the ports function. Let me be able to renew my passport within 72 hours. Let these possibilities come. Let there be genuine ease of doing business.
And you know, before we wrap up, because I know we're really pressed for time, I would like us to touch on one issue, and that's the issue of Abuja citizens at the FCT who are clamoring for inclusion when it comes to voting and getting, you know, their vote count. And if you look at the Constitution, the section 299, 300 and 301 of the Constitution shows that when it comes to the governance for the FCT, it rests on the president and the federal government, and then the National Assembly should also oversee the assembly affairs or legislature affairs of the FCT. But the question is, when Lagos was the FCT, it had the trappings of a state, and so it had the dual positions of being the federal capital territory and also being a state. And the question the citizens are asking is, why can't Abuja maintain that dual, you know, position so that the citizens, the indigents there, can also exercise their franchise?
I've said it. Section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution, 1999 as amended, says that the National Assembly shall make laws for the peace, order, and good governance of Nigeria. So let them gather the 10th Assembly. Listen to the people. Evaluate it. Do the impact assessment. And create a state if necessary. There was a time we had just 3 regions in Nigeria, South, West, North. At the time we had 12 states. At the time we had 19 states. Today we have 36. America has about 50 states. And things are functioning. So if that we make room for development, and it's not just a political game,
That's
to say,
another
caveat.
why
perspective.
not? What is the essence of governance? Enhancing the fortunes of the people. I did not attend the kind of schools my children are attending now, because life is dynamic. You see, when we were in school, we used to caustic to count 1, 2, 3, and you know, this agbalumo, when you eat it, you
The
keep
seeds.
the seeds, and you know, we use blackboard.
As
We
against
chop.
now, there's markable.
You know, in fact, right
Technology.
now, I visited somewhere recently and brought cocoa. This cocoa
the
fruit.
fruit.
Your children do not know what, Daddy, what is this? Some of
Even
them don't
history.
know how pineapple grows. They just drink it as, you know. So life is dynamic. The National Assembly is not for show. It's not to come and display your barbariga and the number of wives and children you have. It's to come and advance the fortunes of the people through laws. Can we make laws in this country that any president under whose authority ASU goes on strike for more than 3 months is automatically impeached?
No, but you know, the problem is in the laws in Nigeria. It's about implementation.
That is what we are saying. You insist on the implementation. The parliamentarians in the it's not the UK citizens that started protesting. I mean, the lawmakers themselves started resigning that this is not what we offered the people. It's because they'll go back to their businesses.
I know we still have a long way
And
to
so,
go, because when you talk about resignation,
politics is not business like we view it in Nigeria. You know, some people go into politics, they become rich overnight, and then, you know, no, it's about service. What will you be remembered for? Whether we like it or not now, in the
Austerity.
annal of Nigerian history, we have records of banditry, terrorism, attack on train stations, building of infrastructure, different kinds of reports that will be put together, packaged in a history documentation, and kept in the archive. Generations to come will read about it. Some of these leaders benefited from free education. Somebody came up with that concept. At a time, Nigeria depended on agroeconomy. And we prospered. Build the cocoa house, the festival station, so great things can happen. Who are the oil thieves? We were talking about implementing laws the other time.
Yeah.
We claim to have identified about 400 sponsors of terrorism in this country. None has been brought for prosecution.
That's where we
And
talk
in
about
Dubai,
accountability and defiance.
yes, in Dubai, I think about 6 were identified, prosecuted, and all jailed. But
yeah.
are you surprised when we have a situation where it took the president to deny, in quotes, the Attorney General and the Governor of CBN for the rule of law to have a leeway? So we need to get serious and realize, like I say often, that the security of one is the security of all. So if you make valuable contributions to the development of the society, we come to the point where you are not intimidated and you enjoy the good of the land. I mean, I look forward to seasons when you can meet, Barack Obama, coming to have lunch in Chinese. I say, oh, Barack, how you doing? I was White House and things like that. So we come to the level.
But do we think that all of this is not as a result of the Jews attracted or attributed to or attached to the office of whoever is in governance? Do we think it should be service and some of these amenities should be reduced or brought to bear?
It should be service. We have discussed these things. But my big question is that who will review the reduction of that Jews?
They're the beneficiaries.
The beneficiaries of the Jews.
So it's almost looking bleak.
Exactly. And that is why, please, electorates should sustain this zeal. There is nothing wrong in weariness. But please don't settle down in weariness. The comfort zone is a dangerous zone. Let's keep driving. I know that the next elections will be more engaging than this one.
Hopefully, because, our correspondents were on the field, and what most of them said is that election has ended in most places, and that's because there were few people out there to vote, which shows that the number of people who are voting at this state and national, or rather state assembly elections, would be way lower than what we experienced at the presidential election, which was, of course, low compared to what we had in 2019. What does this say about our electoral process, especially looking at the fact that many people didn't come out because of the cases of violence, voter intimidation, and the fact that they have lost confidence in INEC?
It's a combination of all, and there has been too much attention at the center because we have a unitary presidential system of government. You can imagine that until the president and the commander-in-chief of the armed forces spoke through his aide, Garba Shehu, the CBN could not implement the directive of the Supreme Court. So if that is the system we run, that center is very, very important. But let me disclose to us now that I've read that the president have signed some bills that may lay the foundation for a new Nigeria right now. So I just want to encourage people that we are likely to be at the threshold of a new curve. So don't get discouraged. They say tough times don't last. Tough people do. And please don't amass enemies. Don't get bitter, always get better.
I think politics generally is a game of
no
permanent friend, but permanent interest.
I need friends, some couples have fought over presidential candidates who don't even recognize them.
Even father with children.
I was telling someone, I saw the president-elect Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu going to collect his return certificate. I didn't see thugs, in that hall, except I don't recognize them. You must learn. And talking about ethnicity, we saw the video where he has gone to visit a prominent personality from the southeastern part of the country. They're already discussing business and saying, if you need a minister, my daughters are here. So let these people, these voluntary thugs, go and sit down and reprofile their lives. You know, if anybody can be governor, it can be you also. So
Okay,
don't let anybody use you for any destructive purpose, because when there is no demand, supply will definitely bow, and that is what we are doing with the education we are bringing out. Why should I be your thug? For what purpose? You know, so why don't you be thug for me? You know, sponsor me without your money. Let me go. Then you'll be fighting people.
But it goes to the issue of poverty, impoverishing the people.
Poverty is a matter of the mind. Yeah, poverty is a matter of the mind.
Matter of the mind or a matter of the stomach.
If you are served fried rice, and by the time you want to eat it, somebody brings feces to throw on it, you won't say because you are hungry. You will still eat. We have seen videos. Was it in Ghana where electors pursued some politicians to take their palliatives away? Okay, now that cash crunch came at the threshold of elections and there was no free money to buy votes, did you not vote?
But you know that we talked about how vote buying was done in kind as against in cash.
But there's a deviation from what used to be.
What it used to be.
You see?
I think that has been a culture over the years.
And
which
these are things we should be teaching people. Why do you want to buy my future? I think I'd rather have a secure future than if you give me 20,000 naira now. In this inflation, food inflation is about 24% now. The regular one is about 21.5%. So
21.9.
a crate of egg is about 2,400. So, and if you have children with very healthy appetites, in 3 days, that crate is gone. So why don't we go for an economy that can create safety net for us, rather than all these 4-year palliatives and things like that? Particularly when you now see the politicians at the other side living large. You know,
at the expense of the
and most of the time they don't even recognize the thugs that got wounded for them.
Or the people.
Exactly. So let's bring it to the ground level and say, okay, go out there, test your popularity, and then I've warned us, they're all friends. You know, they move from party to another where their interests will be projected. So my prayer is just that God will hold them and say, please do my will. Let the people rejoice.
We hope so.
So.
On this note, we are going to say a very big thank you to Barrister Jide Ologun, who is a legal practitioner and, of course, a man of repute. We've seen your profound and robust CV, which is always something to come and beckon on when we need you to speak like this in public places and to give your opinion and assertions on decisions that make us Nigeria. I want to say thank you again. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
What station now?
This moment why this man not allow me to go and vote. See the two of them. You. Now, see the six man.
What are you saying?
It has been 30 minutes. Almost, yes, close to an hour.
Yes, there's both the voter apathy, no doubt. However, I believe that there are many more people who want to come out to express their franchise, but the overwhelming presence of security men and the lockdown of the city, if I were not the governor, I'm not sure I would have been able to get to my polling unit. I mean, the lockdown is extreme, so I'm appealing that it be relaxed while, security adequate measures are taken to monitor and police people's activities, but not prevent people from getting to their polling units. Right now, people are being prevented or they're being deterred from going to vote.